It's wild to me that he parrots so many of what I've been saying in the last few months. Literally reads in his video about Microsoft and Zoom staying committed to DEI, just merging the teams with the rest of the company, and then goes on to say nothing is happening. Companies are really getting rid of DEI, and I don't listen to grifters trying to tell you otherwise.
I think you are getting this reading from his video because you've been covering it for under a year, if I'm remembering correctly. I remember her saying 7 months. Probably's been in it a little bit more. I feel it's a bit of tunnel vision. Upper Echelon has been dealing with the culture war for over 5 years, diving into a wide range of issues in the gaming industry. I just wanted to make it clear, it's the gaming industry. I'm basing that on his SJW video that ironically comes after his Kingdom Come Deliverance videos. Sort of makes sense why he got into it. He's not trying to focus on the culture war, trying to focus in on the games. And when it comes up, he will definitely be talking about the future of gaming industry meltdown. Games journalism is turning into garbage. Then you have some of the other things you could go into, like games as a service are a plague on the industry. Games can be amazingly political. They just aren't right now. Just highlighting the videos that could be considered culture war, and most of the time, Upper Echelon falls on the anti-woke side, but has a more nuanced view of it. I thought I would get that out of the way before I go into Kirsche's response to Upper Echelon, which I frankly don't understand how she comes to certain conclusions she does. So beware, I will have to just speculate based on what she says and the comments that I can find, which I assume comes from her community.
Someone linked me this video and they were like, oh my god. Someone mentioned Brigadage, and I used to watch Upper Echelon videos because I thought they're pretty well done. So like I've always had a pretty positive view of the guy. And like I'm assuming here that this isn't any sort of willful lying. I'm just assuming that he doesn't know exactly what Bridge is.
I have to wonder why she's making these assumptions that she has. Sure, she's going to explain the logic of it, but frankly, in my opinion, they sound rather egotistical and arrogant as all hell.
Doesn't really take it seriously. This is the first time I've encountered someone reporting on Bridge that hasn't credited me for finding it, which like, that's fine. But I take personal umbrage with a few of the things he said in the video due to quite literally being the only person who has been digging on Bridge, and the fact that everyone else who has reported on Bridge has mentioned me in some capacity as the person that brought it to light.
That you know of. Why assume? Because you're the only one publicly speaking about this who hasn't credited you in some way that people outside your sphere would necessarily know that you've been reporting on this, and other people in other sectors outside of YouTube see why I call it egotistical and arrogant.
We're gonna go through this.
All right, today's video is once again about a topic that is pretty much always divisive yet petulant discussed. And to be completely honest here, I'm getting really sick of watching people mischaracterize, misrepresent, and misunderstand this topic.
Me too, buddy.
Personal or financial gain. I'm not going to make it overly specific on who those people are. That's not the purpose of the video, despite the fact I consider them grifters of the highest order. However, if I can provide a complete overview to the best of my ability for anyone who wants to understand these topics better,
grifters of the highest order, eh?
Grift, shall we say, may get blunted, which is probably a very good thing in today's political climate. To put it simply, we do not need more division right now. We need accuracy and critical thinking, which
I agree.
Is currently, regrettably, very short supply.
I also agree.
With that said, let's officially get started. The real truth about DEI and Bridge, which is a term you're probably going to hear quite a bit more often soon enough, in a world where the...
Why does he think Bridge is a term that you're going to hear quite a bit more often soon enough? I've been reporting on it since January, and it has been like pulling teeth to get people to listen to it. Those that have reported on it, I am very grateful for them. But it's like, I have been trying to get this out for 7.5 months. And now you want to say that very soon you're going to hear this term more often and you should just ignore it.
Okay, how the hell did she come to this conclusion? Oh, wait, I know. Egotism and arrogance again. Just because he brought up the grifting thing, which I think she takes as a personal slight because she is thinking for some reason Upper Echelon heard about this via her and very possibly thinks that he might be referring to her as a grifter is just a horrible assumption to start off with. Which, if you go down and believe Upper Echelon who comments on this video, which I do, but I doubt she, despite her demeanor, responds back to him, and Harden probably doesn't fully.
Why would you like go ahead and poison the well in that manner at the beginning of the video, right after talking about grifters of the highest order?
These topics are typically discussed with
And why did you poison the well with your assumptions? As we will find, she seems to accept if you take the hearts of these things to heart. The pinned comment, Upper Echelon, 1 day ago. Haven't watched yet. Heard about Bridge through a post on Kotaku in Action subreddit. I have never heard of you before. Also, the main grifter I was referring to is Grums, which I don't think should be disputed by anyone. Watching now. Kirsche, appreciate the reply, my dude. Like I said in the video, I didn't think you were being disingenuous, just didn't know about Bridge. Which is very understandable since I'm literally who and the one talking about it. Again, that she knows of. I'm happy to give you all my links and sources if you want. Why do you think Grums is a grifter? Which I'll be addressing in a bit. Also, before he even sent in his reply, I was quite curious, and I even got a response. Vincent Martin, why would anyone think that when EU is talking about grifters, that he would be including Kirsche, Grums, and those who cite John F. Trent of That Park Place are the people at the top of my list of people who are most likely grifters. Grand Itaku 2501 with the smiling man, I think he's called, from Ghost in the Shell Complex as his sort of avatar, because Kirsche discovered Bridge and has been speaking out both on her platform and other channels. EU says that the people speaking out are fear-mongering and don't understand the subject. Most interesting that EU doesn't credit Kirsche for her work. The only reason to do so, if he didn't fucking know who she was and was talking about someone completely different, which seems to be the case here, the only reason to do so would be to be able to prevent his viewers from looking her up. And why would he want that? A very conspiratorial tone? Of course, I get no likes, but bam, 11 there. And no reply. Well, look at the comment pinned by Kirsche. It seems my guess was correct. I hope that at least you can learn from this. Very doubtful of that.
At the top of the pyramid, the very top, is ESG, which
And he's
stands for
correct about all of this right
Environmental,
here.
Social, and Governance. Underneath ESG, particularly inside the social arm of the framework, is DEI, standing for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Again,
Which is an
completely
acronym that
correct.
rose to prominence and swept across Western society. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Is that better for
an
volume?
ethos that recognizes the value of diverse voices and emphasizes inclusivity and employee welfare.
He commented on the video about me. You think he might have deleted it? It was only when it had about 20 comments and 2K views. Weird. There were like 2 other people that commented on my Twitter post as well that said that they brought me up on his video, and then their comments disappeared afterwards.
So you're just gonna believe him with absolutely no evidence? I mean, she's not co-signing this. This definitely is a good example of how doing research or having a reaction with chat can affect your interpretation of the content of your research or a video like this. Definitely saw one comment in chat. Don't know if she was paying attention to it, and I don't know how well in her community that this thought is reflected. Probably quite well that Upper Echelon was talking about her somehow, even though he didn't know she existed. Probably more insulting to her audience. But again, just speculating based on what I know about how this shit sort of works. Not going to discount what the chat can bring sometimes to the table, but it really depends on the audience that she has cultivated.
That'd be really weird if he was deleting comments to do with me, considering how I'm not exactly a very prolific creator, as it were.
Well-being as central facets of success. To bring those values to life, companies must implement programs and initiatives.
YouTube deletes comments all the time if you use, like, you know, spooky language that YouTube doesn't like. But if comments specifically mentioning me are deleted, that's not YouTube. YouTube would have no reason to censor my name specifically. It could be coincidence that everybody who commented about me also used no-no language that YouTube doesn't like, but, you know, it's still a little weird.
Well, it looks like she's going into her own speculation. I fact-checked this. There's at least a couple of comments that does bring her up by name that weren't deleted. Again, this is sort of the effect of chat. I saw that particular thing about shadow banning comments, auto filters of YouTube in chat. She acknowledges it, then sort of finds a way to discount it and make it seem like a weird, very possible thing. But maybe I'm just reading it wrong.
It's so random what they censor spooky language. Yeah, it really is. Ozehara has that problem on, like, all of his clips. Like, literally all of them. YouTube doesn't like the cherry.
Actively make their offices more diverse. Lastly, for definitions, as an extension of DEI, we have BRIDGE, BRIDGE, which stands for Benchmarking Race, Inclusion, and Diversity in Global Engagement.
And here is where he says the first incorrect thing. The BRIDGE website he was looking at, the BRIDGE acronym is different. I can't ever remember the acronym off the top of my head. I just know that the G is the gap and all of those things from Cheryl Dijah. And I'll be replaying her video again, because don't worry, we got to loop a little bit for the sake of information permeation. The acronym he read off is for this bridge, the social impact bridge. And when I first dove down into BRIDGE in January, and again, I'm the only one who has been digging into this, so I haven't had anyone do any sort of digging or research to try and figure out more about BRIDGE, to try and figure out if there's something I maybe missed. But I was talking to one of the journalists from Niche Gamer, because a whole bunch of you guys like just rammed their replies about Microsoft, and they actually noticed, and they actually started talking to me, and they seem very receptive to having me write about this for them.
I can't help but think that is rather telling. A lot of her audience that she's talking to right now managed to spam Niche Gaming enough that they sort of started talking to Kirsche here. Oddly enough, that seems very informative. And I do know there are some filtering in YouTube comments that someone talking about Kirsche using the same word, the same language over and over and over again as either spam or maybe a type of advertisement, which is impolite at the very least as a YouTube content creator, and brings up sort of concerns about why she was so quick to make so many assumptions about this particular video here. For example, saying he has the wrong definition. For anyone who actually knows about leftists and how they operate, they do something I like to call hide the ball. Give a single word, and in this case, acronym, different definitions to make it harder to pin down. And just to let people know, this is just Upper Echelon going over what BRIDGE is, at least outlined by what he could find, which is indication that his sort of looking into this is completely independent to anything that Kirsche has been digging into. Doesn't mean her research is wrong or his research is wrong. There's different paths and avenues that each one of them could be going down independently, and they might link up, or they might be just using the same thing independently to make it harder to stamp them out.
And they were like, the timing of these things and the name and the people involved seem coincidental, right? Like it's all on a decent timeline, but there isn't any hard evidence, only coincidental circumstance that links the first bridge initiative to the second bridge initiative. And I was like, I'm willing to say, right, like maybe bridge monitoring program set up in 2021 isn't connected to the bridge that was based on the research that was done that brought up in 2023. They could be disconnected from one another. I don't know. And since the company for the initial bridge is called Social Impact, very difficult to find information on them, because if you try looking...
Exactly. Supporting what I just said. Obfuscating their sort of tactics. And given all that, I think it's more arrogant that she's saying he's wrong at any particular place. That's also setting aside the different methodological methods that someone like a VTuber might deploy to dig into something, and someone like Upper Echelon, who frankly looks into scams and all sorts of other things related to the gaming industry, would know where to look and what to consider putting in a video, or in Kirsche's case, going over it all in stream.
Up Social Impact, you'll get inundated with a bunch of irrelevant things from everywhere else. Unlikely. I mean, unlikely, but when you are a journalist and not just a brain damaged foxwoman on the internet, at least this is how journalism should work, right? You try to hold your evidence to a higher standard than just circumstantial. You want the hard connections proving X goes to Y.
Okay, I have to be wondering if she's holding Upper Echelon to a higher degree here and deducting points from his scorecard for this. Why, excusing any sort of fuck-ups, which clearly she is with all her assumptions that are highly likely to be wrong, given there's no evidence that Upper Echelon knew anything about her, and has made mention of Grums in a previous video. And it always amazes me, people who are stuck in such an echo chamber, they don't realize there are tons of people calling Grums a grifter. There's even an example of that very recently with Sid Alpha, even though he doesn't use those words exactly. And frankly, I think personally, using that word for Grums is understandable, even if I don't fully agree with it. Mainly because it's been used so much, it's lost meaning, like so many other words like racist, sexist, bigot, fascist, and a whole slew of others. Sid Alpha. I spent 3 months trying to cancel my subscription to Ember, which I forgot even existed. Got a 501 error. He later corrects it's a 500 error, to be precise, on your website while trying to cancel for 2 months straight. Took it to your Discord people, who were extremely kind. They said it would be canceled. Then I got charged again, which caused overdraft fee due to medical bills being pulled out of the same time. And those same so kind Discord people still have yet to respond after follow-up DMs. But you managed to fix the 500 error on your website. Go work on your fucking game, Grums. Lest ye be residing in a glass house while you throw these stones.
Which is where a lot of the Marxist subversion tactics get messy as well, because they're not going to come out and say
a few moments later
what they are doing and provide the evidence from their own mouths of what they are doing that they don't expect you to see. Which is why, again, thankfully, I am talking to somebody who actually works in a journalistic sphere. I am going to be doing some interesting things coming up here, which means
a few minutes later.
ESG takes place at what's called the investment level at the very top. DEI takes place at a company level under the social arm of ESG.
And this is where I also think that he gets it a little bit wrong. Like, yes, ESG is the top echelon of these things, and DEI is under the umbrella of ESG, but it's not a corporate arm. They have been calling ESG a moral imperative for quite a while. And companies like BlackRock and Vanguard were giving incentives to companies. If you were pushing this DEI stuff in your company, you would get money from them to continue. And as we saw with Bud Light, they lost their ESG scoring entirely when they didn't stick to the messaging after the boycott.
Why I can understand the retarded Fox girl's perspective on this, and I think it has a little bit of weight. This is sort of like this distinction with the term grifter, a distinction without really much of a difference, more of a difference in one's perspective, a distinction really over semantics. But there's so many times that she 100% agrees, I guess, putting her opinion out there. As someone who's been diving down this for about 7 months, in her own words, comparison to about 5 years of Upper Echelon with a much wider scope on the shitty ass things that the corporate people in the gaming industry does, definitely will be radically different. And of course, she needs some reason to go over this video.
When did they add the A to DEI? They're going to be adding and removing a lot of acronyms because right now they are in defense mode once again. This is again how you know you are having an impact and things aren't hopeless. If things were hopeless, they wouldn't need to change the acronyms. They could just keep full steam ahead as they've been doing for the past couple of years.
A few moments later.
Even though I have been doing this for 7.5 months, even though I put out all of the information on my streams, it's better to have something condensed so that people coming for the first time or people who haven't been to my streams before can see that I'm not just giving you a, just trust me, bro. Just trust me.
BRIDGE is, quote, from their own website, a comprehensive DEI framework to help companies identify, deconstruct, and rethink their own structural gaps that contribute to inequities, end quote. ESG at the top, DEI down below, and BRIDGE as a tool in the execution of DEI initiatives.
And what he's correct about here is that BRIDGE is, in fact, the tool for DE&I initiatives. But he doesn't seem to understand exactly what they are as a tool. And on their website, you can...
I would just like to point out, she again is making a lot of assumptions based on very little. Because what is the purpose of his video? She is 3 minutes and 20 seconds into the video, and maybe he should have brought it up earlier on in the video, but ESG, DEI, and BRIDGE are not the prime concerns of this particular video that she's responding to. It's not about not understanding it, about it not being a guide to BRIDGE. Just an overview at this point of these three sort of things.
Many companies are involved with BRIDGE. You don't even really need to ask where the money is coming from, though I would like to find out more about who is directly funding them, because they have so many companies that can pump them full of funding.
Appreciate you. Now we can move on.
We're only 3 minutes and 26 seconds into the video. What does he mean by I greatly appreciate anyone who's made it this far? He hasn't even used any difficult language. He hasn't put forth any sort of difficult to understand content. Just a little bit weird to put it that early in the video.
I know when I go on 3 to 5 hour rants about corporate schlock, and I'm like, here's another 19-page white paper, chat. Let's read it together. I'm like, I know your eyes are gonna glaze over, my eyes are gonna glaze over, so buckle up, baby. But 3.5 minutes, man?
Yes, this will actually tie into a different video of his. So let me give context to that particular matter.
Destroying our games. I should add here, this is very important, that within the first 23 seconds of the video, I precisely clarified that I'm talking about publishers. The video had nothing to do with current political controversies, and that this was a literal usage of the word destruction, not some sort of overinflated exaggeration. Sure, the title was grabby, but I don't make people wait till the end or leave them wondering what it is they're even watching. I tell them straight up right away, and I make it clear, which happened in the first, again, 23 seconds. But not only that, Asmongold's reaction video included that very same clarity also in the first 23 seconds. If you watched either of these videos for less than half a minute, you would know exactly who they are, and far more importantly, you would know that none of this had a single thing to do with modern politics. None at all. Because it's all about the functionality of video games. It sounds straightforward, right? Watch a video for under 30 seconds and you'll know what it's generally about. Easy. Even if you don't know the full scope of what it contains in a more detailed way. That's not too much to expect, right? Wrong. Apparently that's way more than can be expected from people these days, because after that video goes live, Asmongold's reaction, which had a truncated version of my title, which itself had a slightly truncated and more ambiguous version of Ross's title, the circus got started. Here's an example of a Reddit thread with 4.7 4.7,000 upvotes. If you don't know how Reddit works, that means 4.7 thousand people amplified this beyond the number that downvoted it for being completely wrong, which popped up, even rising as high as one of the most popular posts from the entire week, where the person snarkily asks, "Are they in the room with us right now?" The tagline matters because it indicates that the person making the post thinks this is somehow political, and then thousands of people jump on board, dogpiling Asmongold as some sort of idiot who has the wrong politics and it's different than them. But even further, the mods of this particular subreddit start banning people who try to clarify that no, that's wrong. And if you spent just 23 seconds of time listening, you would hear it laid out perfectly. Now, I know what you're thinking. Reddit is a ridiculous place with ridiculous people who very often congregate together and say ridiculous things at times. But no, this isn't the only example. It's one example of many, and it's actually the smallest example. There is a viral post with over 1 million views and counting and 30,000 likes saying the exact same thing. Further down, the initial poster even admits, quote, "Oh, so the they is actually in the room with us. Hope he is clear enough with his audience about it so people don't wink it off like we know what you really mean," end quote. This is a viral post with hundreds of comments degrading, insulting, or demeaning Asmongold over things that they literally just made up in their own head. They think he must have said horrible things because the title made their brain think he disagrees with my politics, and the resulting display of headline news culture is about as embarrassing as it can possibly get. But wait, there's more. See, these are people that disagree with Asmongold or have predisposed negative opinions of him. These are very weak people, in my opinion, with very low critical thinking skills who jump to conclusions because they're determined to be outraged over whatever they possibly can, even so far as to just manufacture things in their own head. But that's not the only type of person who engages in this type of idiocy. This is Mark Kern, aka Grums. Grums has been very aggressively leaning into the whole Gamergate 2 type situation where DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, are under scrutiny right now. And he's been utilizing that wave of publicity to amplify his own projects and ride the social wave as far as he possibly can.
Hi, we're Visible. Get set to travel this summer with a wireless plan that'll keep you connected on the go. All on.
And Grums is amplify his own projects and ride the social wave as far as he possibly can. Grums is about as far away as you can get from the previous examples, but let me expand on that just a little bit for people who don't fully understand. The person who posted the viral Twitter thread, whose screen name is Terminally Online Leftist, the one that didn't even listen to the first 23 seconds of audio, which would have informed them quite easily that their entire presumptive premise was completely wrong, has a YouTube channel where they've posted multiple different pieces of content defending a company called Sweet Baby Incorporated and debunking misinformation, which is pretty straightforward. Inversely, Grums, or Mark Kern, has been relentlessly criticizing Sweet Baby Incorporated, as well as other community managers and game dev companies, among many other individuals, very often saying things that go on to be regarded as controversial, where people complain or try to debunk them, and the cycle continues. People like Grums decide to say things, people like Terminally Online Leftists disagree with them, and vice versa, that also happens. Around and around it goes. Simple stuff. Well, Terminally Online Leftist, without watching even 23 seconds of content to know that they are totally and completely wrong, makes a post which goes viral because all the other brain dead morons who never read past the headline decide to smash the like button. But Grums, the complete opposite side of the political spectrum here, decided to make a thread, a very long thread, mind you, and pin it to the top of his profile, which is based on the very same false premise. His thread is completely about DEI in games and ESG scores and other politically motivated topics, with Asmongold's face plastered to the top of it, when that wasn't even the subject of the video because he saw his opponent completely getting the facts wrong, since they can't even watch 23 seconds of content to verify anything, and then turned around using the exact same thing that his opponent failed to understand as if it supports the point he's trying to make, because these people are so lazy and shallow they can't even be bothered to spend 23 seconds of their time, not a single one of them, checking whether or not their assumptions are right about something. Think about this. Genuinely think about it.
And I think that highlights, not directly, why Upper Echelon would have his opinion that Grums is a grifter, doing the same thing as the leftist. Rules for me, not for thee. Typically was known as a leftist trait, and he demonstrates the same sort of lack of critical thinking and caring about the actual facts of the matter.
Bridge, as an organization, has a board of directors with an executive committee and basic members from all over corporate America. There's some very big names here that people like to reference, but the gist of it is that this group is extremely, extremely well connected. Sephora.
Him noticing how well connected they are is going to be a very weird thing to remember when we get to the end of the video.
Discover, NBC Universal.
Literally
Condé Nast,
copying
which, for
Kirsche's
anyone
homework.
Who doesn't know, is a massive media conglomerate that owns publications.
Yeah, remember what she said about Upper Echelon poisoning the well? You know what? I hate calling people hypocrites, and I'm not going to do so here. So, form your own opinions on that.
Things like Ars Technica, GQ, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, Vogue, or even Wired. All of these brands and many more are represented in the Bridge board of directors, including a company called McKinsey & Co. Bear with me here, because McKinsey & Co. is a global management consulting firm that is largely responsible for the rise of corporate DEI initiatives.
Again, he's entirely correct in what he's saying here. Like, when I was watching this video, at the beginning, I was like, well, it's a little weird to call everyone else grifters, but like, I'm liking the information you're putting out so far. It echoes everything I've been saying for the last 7.5 months. That's great. We have more people talking about this. And then my opinion changed very drastically.
Across the professional world. See, pretty much all of it traces back to a particular research paper of theirs from 2015 called Diversity Matters, which, despite being relatively unknown, especially to the vocal critics of ESG or DEI, or soon to be Bridge, is actually the inception point for pretty much.
Again, he says DEI soon to be Bridge. Bridge is not a rebranding. Bridge still uses the DEI language. Bridge, as he said previously, is a tool to promote DEI initiatives. Bridge, in their own words, is there to transform DEI from a moral imperative to a DNA of the company, I can never pronounce this fucking word, operationalization of business practice of the DEI tenets.
The entire corporate America DEI craze. In 2015, shortly after the initial paper came out, the Wall Street Journal posted about its findings, even saying, quote, a new study of 366 public companies in the US, Canada, UK, Brazil, Mexico, and Chile by McKinsey & Co., a major management consultancy, found a statistically significant relationship between companies with women and minorities in their upper ranks and better financial performance as measured by earnings before interest and tax, or EBIT, end quote. Also, according to Notre Dame University, in a write-up titled History of DEI, the Evolution of Diversity Training Programs, quote, a McKinsey report highlighted that companies with high racial and ethnic diversity are more likely to have financial returns above their industry medians. This business case for diversity prompted more companies to integrate DEI strategies into their operations, from talent acquisition to customer engagement.
And from all of the articles we've read that Bridge pushes in their smart brief, every single article, when they talk about how DEI is a moral imperative, how DEI is not only necessary, but it is financially good for companies, every single one of them quotes the McKinsey study. Every single one.
End quote. And to really hammer the point home here, remember the tech startup community that I mentioned earlier when quoting the definition of DEI called built-in? Yeah, that very same article from March of this year, 2024, in a section called Improved Business Outcomes, cites a Forbes article claiming that firms displaying culturally and ethnically diverse executive teams are 33% more likely to lead their industries in profitability. The thing is, if you go check the article they cited, they being Forbes in this case, the actual research that they're referring to is the very same work from McKinsey & Co.
Why are there florkies? Why have they stolen his artwork?
Actually, that includes over 1,000 companies, not just the initial 366. My point here, for anyone who's not able to follow along so far, is to showcase that incredibly divisive topics, ESG, DEI, and soon Bridge, have been almost exclusively built around the idea that more diverse companies are somehow more profitable. But what if I told you that the entire initial premise was wrong, and that the research was completely inverted in a way that proves absolutely nothing?
He is again 100% correct here, but he comes to the incorrect conclusion.
Maybe I can give her some points for her semantic argument against Upper Echelon. But again, that is not the focus of this video. And she's already priming the audience that his conclusion is wrong.
increasing diversity by any means necessary.
We have seen this pattern time and time again, right? Ideologue creates a study that reinforces their beliefs, cites themselves, journalists report on it ad infinitum, and all cite the same exact faulty source. We have seen this with the McKinsey study. We have seen this with John Money and the rise of transgenderism. We have seen this even most recently with Ubisoft's new Assassin's Creed game, where the guy who created the entire story about Yasuke being a samurai wrote a book about it himself and kept editing the Wikipedia articles in order to push his fiction as fact. So we know that they do this. We know that they create studies. They don't have them peer reviewed. They don't have them checked, and they just perpetuate it as fact.
And you don't think Upper Echelon perhaps knows a little bit about this? I'm sure she's just bouncing off of his point here.
This isn't corporations looking at a study and going, you know what, we need to do that. This is an ideologue who made a study, sold it to everyone they could talk to about selling it, so that people could come in and transform the corporate landscape. This is, again, nobody likes the word, and I'm sure I'll get called a grifter for it. This is Marxism in action.
I'm not going to be so arrogant to say Kirsche is outright wrong here, but I will say this goes against the facts about McKinsey and Company. If you think they are ideologues, you might want to check their fucking history. Because if they have an ideologue in their sort of corporate ranks and structure, that would go against their history of controversies and scandals. Has to be made on a systematic level of looking at other things. When you look at just the possible reasons McKinsey and Company might have done it, that's a completely different thing. Normally, I would say people like this are talking out of their ass and not grifters, but in her case, she has another crevice that it could be coming out of.
You really wish people would start paying more attention rather than believing everything they say. To look at corporations and just be like, those silly corporations, they just didn't know any better. They just didn't know that this was all manufactured and made up. That's why every time they change the terminology, they all do it at the same time. It's just coincidence, you conspiracy theorists.
However, this is where things start to fall apart and where the entire house of cards comes crashing down very rapidly. ESG and DEI don't work. To be clear, I'm not saying that diversity is a bad thing. Don't get it twisted.
The people who are pro-DEI agree with this sentiment. This is the point of Bridge. In Bridge's initial outreach, they were like, DEI in its current iteration does not work. DEI in its current iteration is not being treated as seriously as it needs to be. Both the people against the DEI and the people at Bridge and the people who are pro-DEI came to the same exact conclusion. It is not working. The difference where we divulge, which I added in my SHRM video, which when I reacted to Tim Pool saying that Charlemagne was also sick of DEI, I put out the evidence showing that these ideologues infiltrating companies are not saying we need to do away with DEI because it's not working and it's not profitable. They're saying it didn't go far enough.
And is Kirsche just gonna listen and believe what these people are saying in their promotional material? That they're gonna drop the act and pretend like they're not in it for the money? I think she's just incredibly naive, especially after everything she says about Marxists. And don't think I miss where he brings up, I'm not saying diversity is bad. A little bit lame of a sort of thing, probably to avoid getting labeled and grouped in with people not as careful with their language, because diversity has a diverse amount of things it means to a diverse amount of people. You can say diversity is not necessarily a bad idea in theory, and of course, someone could definitely hint that this is a dog whistle of some type, but is it an honest thing to sort of create that conflation? I'm not going to answer that. You can answer that for yourself.
Bed DEI in the heart of the company, make it part of everyone's job. We need to get rid of DEI teams and DEI positions, and just everyone in the company has to comply. The same exact time we're going, oh, guys, believe us, we're done with the organization. But it's like, well, diversity and of a diversity problem using the subversively to make people believe they are doing good things while they positively discriminate against people they believe deserve to be discriminated against. This is where understanding what subversion is very important. And if someone hasn't watched like the Yuri Bezmenov speeches in the 80s, I would highly recommend listening to them.
I agree with her on that. But if she thinks that was a ideological sort of thing, I actually agree with that. But I had a different takeaway of that. I got the impression that the good old Soviets wanted to use these sort of Marxist ideas in the West to cause division between the right and left and possibly cause conflict between rightoids and leftoids, leftists and right-wingers, a massive proportion to destabilize the sort of social climate. And isn't that what we're in right now? Isn't that what's happening? My personal interpretation of that is you win that game by not playing their game. And she brought up Tim Pool. At some point, I even subscribed to his old theories that Occupy Wall Street were destroyed by the progressive stack. And my own personal theory is the corporate interest at that personal point, it was probably very theoretical, using sort of progressive politics, identity politics to sort of distract from corporate greed. You know, have the leftists fight within their own and fight against the right and even the center to sort of distract from corporate malfeasance, which was the housing crash at that time. And what do we have now that we might want to be obfuscating? Fuck, too many things to tell. Top of my mind would be the disaster that was the lockdown. There's also, of course, the fact that the trained Marxists, BML, sort of were, scamming money. Those trained Marxists, that was just about the ideology. Then why did they fucking steal money? Why, when it comes to all these big-ass Marxists who get power, they go for the dollar over actually, instead of using that money to spread the cause? Just a different opinion on the same exact facts there. She has hers, I have mine, Upper Echelon has his own.
Saying that increasing diversity alone does not create a 35% higher likelihood of increased financial returns. First, for ESG at the top level, the investor side of things, the entire ethos is just smoke and mirrors. According to research from Vox EU, which looked at ESG fund performance and investment.
The woman who monopolizes the robot industry.
I get it.
Mom!
Oh, now I get it.
Funds begin to outperform the portfolio that they have just disclosed, indicating that they are now holding higher paying assets than the ones they have recently made public. This trend is in line with the hypothesis that after the disclosure event, funds might replace some ESG assets with higher yielding but less sustainable assets, end quote. To simplify that, because a lot of it's boring, I know, ESG funds are not even holding assets that conform to their own ideology. These investment portfolios
of course
are
they're
most
not.
likely
Because the whole point of this ideology is not that it is working for the people pushing it. It is supposed to be for the average person on the ground. These are not tenets that most of the people pushing this actually believe in. They know that it is a tool that they can use to force compliance on people in order to push an ideological agenda to change the culture to what they want it to be.
And you believe that because you listen to what they make publicly available. I fundamentally can't agree with her particular line of logic, so I think I will just jump ahead to the end where I find some of her more outlandish claims being made. If you have an issue with how I've structured this video, cut things out, or anything like that, let me know in the comments below, and I will do this on the stream where people are definitely allowed to come on and argue against any of my thoughts on these particular matters here. For those not in the know, can go to either Upper Echelon's video or Kirche's stream and get what you want out of them.
how anyone who doesn't agree with them is a racist or a bigot, when in reality, it's most likely just a bureaucratic corporate initiative born from a misrepresented research paper formed under a misidentified expectation that forcefully increasing diversity will somehow improve financial prospects.
And this is where he lost me. I was like, how does he spend the entire video parroting what I've said for the last 7.5 months? How does he?
Again, he was not parroting what you've been saying for the last 7.5 months. Get it out of your head. He did his own independent research, and he has a much longer and broader view of the gaming industry than you do. It doesn't necessarily make him right. I'm not going to say that, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're right either. When it's very clear the framing of this stream, the impression she's working with is most likely wrong because it fits the evidence better. She herself said she's been trying to get several bigger content creators to talk about this. And it's like been difficult to such a point where it's her fans who got her in the door with a niche gamer. And thanks to Upper Echelon actually including Bridge within this sort of video, which is focused on the 2015 McKinsey and Company's paper that was used as the sort of starting point for all this stuff. The prime focus of his video, I'm going to say, she's talking out of her cleavage.
You read Microsoft and Zoom and all these other companies reaffirming their commitment to DE&I, and then his conclusion is, oh, these are just silly companies believing something off a faulty study. It wasn't their fault. They didn't really want to do anything. It's not ideological. It was all about the profit, and now they're realizing it's not profitable, and so they're getting rid of it. Don't listen to the people who are telling you they're not getting rid of it. They're grifters. They're grifting and lying. What?
Is she laughing because she actually believes this reading of his video? My reading would be like, yeah, they're virtue signaling. They're pushing this to make money, to get other people to invest money in this sort of dead industry. You know, sort of like a scam, okay? Something he covers a lot of. Kirsche, have you really looked into the makeup of scams? And again, I'm not going to say she's necessarily wrong. Just she buys into the scam as if this is what these people really believe in and this is what they really aim for. When generally the scammer talks big, talks a lot of people into doing dumb shit so they can make money behind the scenes. And I think that's a much better, fairer assessment to think that's where Upper Echelon is going with this. And then on top of that, he's saying there are other people, both on the left and right, mainly Mark Kern, who are extending this scam themselves. Maybe if Kirsche didn't just jump on this video like a day after it came out and did her research on Upper Echelon, she could have not looked like such a retarded Fox Girl VTuber. But you know what? Some people think jumping on a story without doing your research and just making assumptions that makes yourself look better and others look bad, creating drama, creating a buzz is good, no matter if it's true or not.
So, like, I got to this point and I was just like exasperated, man. I was like, what? How? I don't understand.
Which isn't true and will cause these initiatives to evaporate just as fast as they initially sprung up, which we see happening already as companies realize the mistake. The truth about DEI is a lot less scary than some people seem to believe. It's a lot less organized or conspiratorial, at least.
How do you look at Bridge and see how many global companies are involved? You even showed under the umbrella of some of those companies how many smaller companies are involved. How can you say it's smaller and not as organized as people make you believe?
A few minutes later.
I feel like Alex Jones here, where I'm like screaming and showing receipts and just like ripping off my t-shirt trying to find memes. And people are just like, don't listen to the crazy guy. It's not happening. Don't believe him.
Clearly because you're not aware of the environment. You're not aware of the criticism against Mark Kern, as clearly reflected in the comments section from your audience, because you don't want to take a stand on it. Is it because he is fighting the same good fight you are? Or are you just a retarded box girl on the internet?